Today, we're making hot sauce. Hi, and welcome back to the Better Terra Kitchen. Today, I'm going to show you how to make fermented hot sauce. We have a ton of peppers coming out of the garden right now because the heat is really starting to set in here in the summertime. We have our garlic from earlier in the season and all of these peppers. We have mostly jalapenos. I threw in some banana peppers because why not? Some cayennes. These sweet lunchbox peppers. One plant of these has been giving off an enormous amount of peppers, and these are really, really good. You can eat these right out of your lunchbox, as it says. And garlic. So this is going to be kind of a chili garlic hot sauce. I've already worked on some of the garlic cloves here, but I'm going to need a lot more, so I'm going to work on this strand here, and then we'll get underway. Some of the things that you'll need for fermenting vegetables is a vessel to ferment in. This is a 2-gallon Stoneware Crock. All of these vegetables go in, the garlic will go in, and a salt brine. About a 2% brine is what we're looking at. So this is 1 gallon of filtered water, and then just a half a cup of non-iodized salt. So your canning salt, pickling salt, this is kosher salt, just anything that doesn't have iodine. And it's important for your water to not be chlorinated. So if you can get filtered water, that's the best. Like I mentioned, this is a fermented hot sauce. And let me talk a little bit about the fermentation process. So whenever you ferment vegetables in a saltwater brine, it's a lacto-fermentation, and that uses the lactobacilli that are present on raw garden vegetables. So we don't need to add anything else other than the vegetable and the saltwater brine. The process will automatically start. There are some starter packets that you can purchase to add in that accelerate it, and that's okay. That just ensures that the fermentation process takes hold quickly. I've never had an issue with fermentation starting. Now, sometimes I do fermented eggs, and that'll be another episode, I think. And I use those fermentation starters because there's not the lactobacilli present on a hard-boiled egg. Once the fermentation process starts and the lactobacilli start doing their work, they create lactic acid within the brine. So the bad bacteria that might be present on the vegetables cannot survive the saltwater environment, but the lactobacilli can. And as they break down the sugars in the vegetable, they create that lactic acid and raise the acidity level or lower the pH, however you want to think about it, to a level where it's safe to be stored for a longer period of time. And for hot sauce, you get a delicious result. You can really ferment any kind of vegetable. The softer vegetables don't do so well, like tomatoes, squashes, things like that. But cucumbers, turning them into pickles, delicious. I'm going to follow this episode with a fermented pickle episode. To make sure you don't miss those episodes, be sure to subscribe. And if you click the bell icon, you'll get a notification whenever I put out something new. So now, what do we need to do to get started? Well, with the peppers, we're just going to remove the stems and rough chop them and add them to the crock. With the garlic, we'll peel them and give them a crush and then add that. And then on top of everything, we'll add the saltwater brine. We'll fill this bag with remaining brine, and that's going to be our weight that holds all of the vegetable under the brine. So let me go ahead and get started with the garlic. That's going to take a little while, and going through processing the peppers. So I've got all the garlic peeled. The shaking between 2 bowls actually worked pretty good, saved me quite a bit of time. But I think I've got a good ratio between garlic and peppers. And the next process is rinsing and stemming the peppers. Now, just a good rinse. Don't want to wash them because we don't want to wash off that lactobacilli that is already present on the vegetable. So I'm going to give them a quick rinse in the sink and then start cutting the stems off and then just rough chopping. If you didn't put on gloves during the garlic peeling process, I would certainly recommend it during the pepper process, because if you rub your eyes or pick your nose or use the restroom, you're going to regret a good portion of your day after that. So gloves. And while the gloves are on, don't pick your nose or scratch your butt or rub your eyes. Take the gloves off. So as I stem, I have a bucket here next to me where I'm putting all of my compostables. And then if there's any fruit that you have with bad spots, cut that out. If the whole thing is bad, don't use it because that's already loaded with bad bacteria. So we'll just rough chop. And I've already washed my crock, given it a good rinse, and then I'll just add the peppers in from there. Just removing the stems, and then a rough chop. This lets that saltwater brine contact the entire part of the fruit. Doesn't have to be pretty. So as I keep chopping away here, I'll talk a little bit about what comes next. So after we get all of these processed and in the crock, we'll put our brine in. We'll put the Ziploc on the top to hold everything down. If you search, you can find like glass discs or stone discs that'll sit in there as weights also. But the Ziploc bag filled with brine, that works just as good. Now we fill it with brine in case it leaks, then it... I just put a handful of chopped jalapenos in the compost bucket. That's what I get for talking and working at the same time. So let's keep doing that. So like I was saying, we use the Ziploc bag in case it leaks. The brine inside the Ziploc bag won't change the salinity inside the crock. And then we move it down to the basement to a cool, dark place, and we let it sit there for pretty close to 2 weeks. And you'll be able to see bubbles coming up along the sides of the Ziploc bag or the weight. And that's how you know that the fermentation process is underway. And once it stops or significantly slows down to a point where you don't notice any more fermentation happening, then you remove and strain all of the vegetables from your crock, retaining the brine. So pour it out of the crock, through a colander, save the brine. And then once you have that fruit, you blend it smooth, add a little bit more brine to it to get it the right consistency you want. And that's your hot sauce. Since the acid levels from the lactic acid have built up to levels that are safe for storing, you can bottle it, put it in the refrigerator, and it'll last a good long time. This kind of hot sauce is great to share with friends. As I'm finishing up with the peppers here, do you have a favorite fermented vegetable that you'd like to share? Leave a comment down below. Once I finish up with the peppers here, then we'll move on to the garlic. The next process with the garlic is just giving them a good smash. And that really helps it release the oils and stuff that are in the garlic. And then we'll add the garlic into the crock. And then we'll be ready for the brine. That's it. Now that all the peppers are chopped, we're going to crush some garlic. And I'm going to try a little bit of an experiment here so we can do several at once. I'm thinking maybe if we use a cutting board. We can give everything a good crush. And it looks, oh, I almost rubbed my eye with my glove on. That looks like it worked. So we can add this bunch into the crock. Some of these bigger pieces are keeping the smaller ones from getting into the game. There we go. Okay, so in the crock now, we have all of our peppers and our garlic. I would say the crock is about halfway full. I'm gonna give everything just a light hand mix to get the garlic incorporated down into the peppers. It smells peppery. These hands with all of this pepper juice, capsaicin on them, these are deadly hands right now. So let me get the brine mixed up and we'll get the brine added here. I added the salt a little while ago so it can start dissolving, but I need to dispose of these gloves safely and then give that brine a good stir. So here we have 1 gallon of filtered water and a half a cup of non-iodized salt. And I'm going to give it a good stir here to get that salt dissolved in the water. Fun times. For fermenting pickles, this is the same brine solution, the 2% saltwater brine. And in the crock I add the cucumbers with the blossom ends and the stem ends trimmed. And then just whatever kind of herbs and spices that you like in your pickles. Dill, mustard seed, peppercorns. I like to put in some hot peppers. And those I have found are the best at about 10 days fermented. Like I said, there'll be an episode of that coming up real soon, like later today. And make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss that one. Okay, so our salt is all dissolved inside the water. It's salty. And we want to pour in enough that we cover the peppers with about 1 inch to spare. So let's go ahead and fill. Okay, the peppers have started to float. Giving off a little bit of a peppery essence there. I think I'm going to add just about that much more. When I'm pushing down, yeah, that's good. So now when we put in our weight, It'll hold everything below the surface of the brine. And to do that, I'm gonna have to make some more brine. All right, that looks dissolved. So we're now gonna fill our Ziploc bag about halfway. Let's set it in here and see how well it weights everything down. Pretty good. I think I'm gonna add the rest of the water. The Ziploc bag definitely works better in the 1 gallon crock. Because I think with this, I'm gonna have to lay it on its side. A little tricky here to get it where it holds all of the peppers down. We're gonna have a few that float up. We'll just have to scoop those out. Now that everything's in the crock, it's time to move everything to the basement. And in 2 weeks, we'll be ready to make our hot sauce. Between now and then, we'll check in on it every couple of days. And at the top, there'll be a white kind of foamy scumminess, and you can take a clean spoon and kind of scrape that off, rinse it in some brine solution, and then continue to remove that every few days. That removes the seeds and the things that float to the top, and those will start to get a little funky. No need to remove the weight, just let it go for the 2 weeks, and we'll see you then. It's 2 weeks later. It seems like just yesterday we put this stuff in the basement. It's been having a good fermentation, and somewhere in the middle of the process, I ordered the ceramic weights to put in because the bag kept turning and floating, and peppers were floating to the top. We didn't want any of that. So today, we're gonna have our first taste, and then we're gonna put it in bottles. I'm gonna show you some optional steps that you can do, but they're not necessary. So to start with, we're just gonna go ahead and remove the weights and strain off the brine and get the peppers themselves into the colander here. So let's see how big of a mess I can make. I'm gonna put the gloves on, just tasting the brine. It's got a nice heat to it. The lactic acid level is up right where we want it. So I have a pH meter, and safe is 4.5, 4.6. And we were at 4.4, so we're stable. It'll keep like this in the lactic acid for a very, very long time. So I'm going to move my bowl and my colander to the sink. And we don't need to retain all of the brine, but some of it, because we're going to use that to bring our consistency where we want it. So I'm going to start with removing the weights. And as you can see, these are split weights. I covered the middle with a flat from a mason jar. So we'll give those a good rinse here in a little bit. Get those ready for the next. Yeah, here's that flat I used to cover the hole. So the peppers are starting to float up. They look really nice. There's a stem that made its way in. All right, let me start pouring this into the colander. Got some garlic stuck in the bottom here. We don't want to miss any of that. Okay, so we'll go ahead and let that drain. The smell is fantastic. I'm just going to set this for right now on top of the crock. We've retained all of this beautiful liquid. So now I'm going to transfer small batches of the peppers into the blender here. Okay, so then we have almost full. Then I'm going to add to this about a half a cup of brine. And we can adjust that as we blend. All right, put the top on. Okay, here we go in Blitz. I think we'd go with just a smidge more brine. About another 1/4 of a cup. And since we're going to do this in batches, we're going to be somewhat consistent between our blending here. Let's get our first taste. Oh, the smell is great. It's hot sauce. Chase that with some coffee. Goodness. The garlic balance is really, really nice. It definitely has a spicy kick to it. And I think in my final, I'm going to add a little apple cider vinegar just to bring out that a little bit more of a vinegary flavor, but not very much. So like I said, I was going to show you some optional steps. From here, you can bring your consistency to make it thinner with more brine, or by adding a little apple cider vinegar. Or you can go just like this. If you like a thicker hot sauce, this is pretty thick. This is almost like a paste. And with the acid level being where it's at, this is stable here. You can put this in a jar, put it in the fridge, and it'll keep basically forever if it lasts that long. But we're going to have a lot, and I have some little 5-ounce woozy bottles with the shaker top. Those are out on the back deck right now in the boiling pot, getting those nice and sanitized. The steps that I'm going to go forward with that aren't necessary is I'm actually going to heat my sauce in the stock pot and bring it to a simmer because I want to stop the fermentation. Because whenever I put in the bottles, I don't have enough room in the refrigerator for probably 24 bottles of hot sauce. I want to be able to put these away in the cupboard or down in the basement and then use them as I need and give them out as gifts. So with heating, you can stop fermentation, and that's what we're going to do. And then I'm going to work on my final consistency once it's in the stock pot. So I'm going to transfer this batch to the stock pot and then finish blitzing the rest. So at the last moment, I decided to add a step. The amount of pulp that was in it, I wasn't happy with how that was going to work, possibly in the woozy bottles with being able to shake it out. So I have this vegetable strainer. This is the solids coming out here. So I have this vegetable strainer that's a KitchenAid attachment. This thing is great. So I'm putting in the pepper and brine after I run it through the food processor. And what you see here is it bringing out all of the liquids and all of the solids come out here. So we'll be able to get almost a pure sauce with none of the solids. And what I'll do after all of the solids come through is I'll run those through again, and it'll squeeze out all available liquid. I have to be careful here. I'm getting some splashback. So we've got a beautiful sauce consistency here now. Oh, it's very nice. I don't think I'm going to want to thin this at all. Maybe with a little bit more liquid of the cider vinegar. I haven't added any yet. This is just the brine that we've added and the juice itself from the peppers. So it's got a nice pulpiness, but it's not a heavy pulp that'll get clogged up inside the sauce bottles. So I'm going to transfer this now to the stock pot and get that warming. Whoop. Well, it's no fun if you ain't making a mess, right? So it's the pulp. My funnel is a bit thin for the pulpiness. Let's see if a chopstick will help. All right, that's not working. So this is a much slower method, but I don't have another funnel option, so this is how we're going to do it. The measuring cup method wasn't necessarily the most efficient, but we got it in there. This one's kind of messy. We wasted a little bit, but not very much. This one's about halfway full, and that's not a problem because that one will go straight in the refrigerator, and that'll be the first one to get utilized. So we're just cleaning off the rims, cleaning off the threads, and then we'll reach in here. We'll grab ourselves a shaker or a flow control end and a cap. So this is the one that's going to go in the fridge. I want to experiment and see how the top works. Oh, great. I like that. So that will go in the fridge. The rest of them, we'll continue with adding the stopper top and a cap, nice and tight, and capping the last bottle. There we go. I'm going to take these over to the sink and give them a rinse. After all that, here's our final product. We got 15 5-ounce bottles of hot sauce. It's got a great color, it's got a great consistency, and the flavor is amazing. It's pretty hot, but the garlic flavor on the backside is perfect. We retained some of our brine. We're going to try to see if we can add this to dishes, just on top of salads maybe, or maybe like use it like you would a malt vinegar on chips or fries. And then a couple of quarts of brine that we're going to retain just for doing some refrigerator pickles possibly, or maybe some spicy fermented eggs. The crock does most of the work. I checked in on it every couple of days just to make sure there wasn't anything funky growing on the top, molds, or any kind of off smells. That's a good gauge that something's going wrong. Use your nose. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider subscribing if you haven't already. Click that like button and leave me a comment if there's other ways that you've fermented hot sauce. And this isn't the only way to do it. We could have added onions, we could have added some tomato, we could have roasted our peppers and then added it. Adding the heat plays with the bacteria a little bit, so that's a good time to use a fermentation starter. So please leave us a comment. If you try out this recipe, if you try it in a different way, let us know. We would be glad to read those. That's a wrap on another great episode. Subscribe and stay tuned for our upcoming episodes, and keep on working toward a better Terra, one hot sauce at a time.